Welcome everybody to the Insurtech Breakfast. Thank you so much for joining early this morning. So my name is Gabriela Trujillo. I'm part of the incredible team at HIT's House of Insurtech Switzerland. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning, hosting again. This platform was created to open up interesting conversations and to share expertise of our peers. It would be great if we could see all your faces. I know that you guys have your cameras off, but if you would like to, and you feel like it, you're more than welcome to turn on your cameras and share with the whole group. Just remember that today's session will be recorded and shared later on for those who couldn't join with us live. So today we're bringing you a very interesting topic linked to something a lot of people are talking about nowadays: AI-generated imagery, especially art. So the advancements in AI technology have made it easier than ever to create convincing replicas of famous works of art. These fakes can be incredibly difficult to spot. This has created a new frontier in the art world where experts are working to stay ahead of the curve and detect these forgeries. So for that reason, we welcome our guest speaker, Carina. We are delighted to have her back for the second time at the Insurtech Breakfast. She's the CEO of Art Recognition and expert on the field, and she's here to shed some light on this interesting topic. So remember that at the end, we will have a Q&A where you can ask all the questions, but if you like to intervene, just raise your hand or write your questions in the chat. Okay, so good morning, Carina.
Good morning, Gabby, and thank you so much for the kind introduction.
No worries.
Welcome, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here for the second time as a speaker at the Insurtech Breakfast. At Art Recognition, indeed, we have an AI to authenticate both physical and digital, hopefully, forgeries. As Gabby mentioned, today the topic will be mostly the digital fakes, which are very much on the rise, unfortunately, nowadays. I'll be happy, to talk a bit more both about the, software parts of how these fakes are generated with the machine, but also in terms of printing them. So what possibilities do they have to produce real fakes out of the digital ones? I also have some images prepared for you. For now, I will just hand it back over to Gabby to kick off the conversation. And I look forward to an interesting session and discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carina. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get right to it. What is the current status of generative art?
Right. So a word of introduction, that the generative AI, it includes a few more things, it's not just generative art, it's generative text, for example, and the superstar is certainly ChatGPT, which I think everybody is very much aware of. So the principle of generative art is quite similar, actually, so you are prompting some text to the respective software, and ChatGPT returns other text, but there are programs, there is software that returns images instead. So this is what's called a question and response system. One of the most well-known one is called Stable Diffusion. It made headlines, unfortunately, lately because they got sued. The reason why they got sued is because for their trainings, they used copyrighted images in addition to images free of copyright. And this prompted, a wave actually of legal action by artists. So that's one of the main issues actually in these models nowadays. So what do they feed into the trainings? But leaving this aside, so this Stable Diffusion was trained, just to give you an idea, it was trained on about 5 billion pairs of images, so 5 billion. So we're talking about that order of magnitude. So pairs of images means that into the training, they are feeding a certain kind of image and a caption. And that allows, the machine to learn the connection between the image and the text, so that when when you are typing some text into the software, it will go and search for a pattern, so to deliver what you want. So that's the principle. It's very basic, actually. I've tried to access this morning. Unfortunately, the server of Stable Diffusion is down. So I'm not able to do a live demo, but I prepared for a bit later during the conversation. So we retrieved some images before this meeting, which I'll show to you, combined with some real art, and then it would be nice, to discuss around it, like can we distinguish them from one another?
Okay.
So that's the Stable Diffusion. There are also other programs that work, based on the same principle. There is, for example, DALL-E, created by OpenAI, which is also the creator of ChatGPT. So they have an alternative program also for images, and the principle is really exactly the same, So there is a prompt that consists of a text description, and then you can generate some images. There is, of course, another one by Google. It's called ImageN, and also a text-to-image diffusion model, as it's called. So that's one class, if you will, of generative model that work, based on text. But there is also another category, which is based on images. So the type of learning behind it is called style transfer. So basically, the algorithm know, how to convert an input image into an output image in the style of input image. So, for example, if you put in your own headshot, and you'd like to have it, transformed into a Renaissance portrait, you would get it out of that software. So it's a different principle, and that's not, necessarily for the purpose of creating new art, but more like for fun, basically. So transform photographs into images. I have actually downloaded this software. So with this, I was a bit more successful. So if you guys are curious, I can show you how it works.
Of course.
Okay. So I'll try to share my screen, or you have to enable me,
Okay.
Gabi.
Sure, I will. Okay. Let me know if you can.
I'll try again. Okay. Do you see my
I
screen?
can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So I had picked an example here, which is a screenshot of myself and Ludovica, a colleague. Ludo, if you are in the audience, please don't kill me. So that's the first picture that I could grab, quickly on my desktop. So what you see here, so this software is called Deep Art. It used to be called deepart.io. Now they rebranded into Deep Artifacts. And so here you can just download it for free, basically, and then you can convert it into a modern art, for example.
Yeah.
And it looks like this, or into a fantasy, or into, and then okay. This takes a bit longer, but you're getting the idea. I mean, you can also change the contours and sharpen it and blur it and so on. So I mean, it's a very, very fun tool to play with, but it's not something that's used normally for fraudulent purposes.
Of course.
Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty much it. So that's more or less of an overview, of the software that there is on the market currently that can be used for this purpose.
Okay. So is generative AI, meanwhile, to produce high quality digital fakes? Could you give some examples of that?
Yes, of course. I mean, you know that there is a lot of digital manipulation with AI, of course, and indeed, I mean, this has been spreading like fire, like seriously over the past few years. Like, you know, these examples maybe because they are very much also on the social media. Like, for example, you know, the Pope wearing like
the jacket,
yeah, exactly, or the I don't know, the Donald Trump arrested, you know, these kind of things. I mean, they are very good, right, and very convincing. Now, art in terms of paintings is of course no exception, and indeed generative art, I mean, including stable diffusion, which I have talked about, which is down unfortunately these days, this can also produce very high level digital forgeries. And here I'd like to show you some images, so I'll share my screen again. Because this is really quite impressive. So I will enter the full screen.
Yeah.
Here, what we did, we put side by side two paintings: the famous Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh and its stable diffusion counterpart. This one, you might say that it's not perfect. Okay, so you can notice kind of that the stable diffusion one, it's not like the real thing. Now look at this. So on the left is a self-portrait by Van Gogh, and on the right is the stable diffusion one. So I mean, I'm far from an art expert, but if I would look at the right portrait, you know, the stable diffusion, I would not be able to say that this is AI. You know?
Yeah.
So it's and we have more of this actually. I should have probably played the game, you know. I should have asked the audience if they are able, you know, to distinguish. But in some cases, I mean, they are extremely powerful, these tools. Like, you can really not tell them apart. We do have, you know, ways to train the good way AI, you know, to recognize them. But I mean, in the first place, like, if you are you know, let's say a regular, you know, art lover, and you would see this, I mean, you can easily get fooled. I don't know if we have another one. Yes, we have another.
Yeah.
So all of this, they are generated with AI, like the right ones.
Yeah.
And you know, like there are details that don't work perfectly, like, for example, the teeth, or also if you are looking in these examples on the internet, the fingers, you know. So like, if you really want to spot it, you have to zoom into the nails and then you might catch a glimpse, you know, you might realize. But otherwise, I mean, they are becoming very, very powerful. And of course, I mean, this technology is advancing every day. So, I mean, we expect that soon, you know, the teeth and the nails will be perfect. And I mean, that's that can become a problem on the art market, because I mean, the proliferation of such digital fakes, you know, in combination with very powerful hardware, who can, like I said in the beginning, who can convert them like into real fakes. I mean, this is very, very dangerous for the art market, and it can flood the market with forgeries. And we're talking about a market that's already, you know, full of forgeries.
Of course. So when you're talking about recreating it, would be like 3D printing, right?
Yes, basically, so, yes.
Can you tell us a bit more about the advancements of 3D printing technology within the art context?
Indeed, indeed. So this technology, I mean, the 3D printing, like you said, specifically applied of art, I mean, it has also seen remarkable improvements during the past few years. It's fair to say that most of the applications don't necessarily have a fraudulent, you know, purpose. So they are meant to make a positive impact by helping, for example, museums to create copies of their artworks and display them, you know, so that the good ones don't get damaged, you know, if it stay in proper conditions or that kind of thing. I did a bit of research actually on this, and I was amazed. I mean, there are companies, there is one company called Factum Arte, that's based in Madrid, and they specialize into applying new technology to create accurate copies of artworks for museums or galleries. So they have contractual arrangements with them. They say there are about 50 people with a very diverse set of skills, like architects, engineers, software, IT people, but also molders, conservators, painters, sculptors, and textile specialists, and so on. And they use a wide, variety of techniques to create art. But again, they advertise themselves as doing it for good reasons, to help museums and galleries and so on. But you can imagine what would happen, if this technology would fall into the hands of very skilled forgers.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the 3D printing, it's also the laser technologies or some, wood and stone carving. And there is a wide, variety of techniques that can be used, to produce like very convincing art that's not real, kind of. There is also another company that's called Verus Art. They are based in Canada, I believe. And they also do the same thing, they create digital backups of scanned artworks. And I think they even contributed to an exhibition, so like paintings, all of them created with the 3D painting technology. And what I thought it was quite interesting is the fact that they can be used also or this technology can be used to restore paintings. So like to digitally repaint the areas that have been, for example, erased because of various reasons. So that's very good. Also, something interesting is the fact that there is a project at MIT to replicate paintings with the help of AI. So for the same purpose, like if the painting has been damaged because of some reason, it can be redone digitally. So these are all good, advancements. But again, once this technology is being, developed, it's very easy, to be used like for the wrong purposes.
Of course. So how can this complicate the process of authenticating the artwork itself?
Yeah. So, this is a very, very serious threat to the art market because, now we know, we have very powerful tools to create digital art, and we have also very powerful tools to convert them into physical artworks. I heard actually, from discussions with our peers, that there are so-called factories, located in China or in some other places of the world that literally flood the market with such fakes, and this phenomenon is picking up like very, very strongly in even this year, like even in the past 6 months. And it's it's a strong battle. It's difficult to stop, but not impossible, of course. That's why we're here. But we often look at markets like the Chinese one or the Russian one, where this proportion of fakes is huge. Up to 80% if they are saying. So if you are adding, even more fakes generated like this, it's becoming almost impossible, to buy some real art on the Russian market, for example, or the Chinese one. So that's a big, big issue.
Right. And so what do you think what do you know that is being done currently to prevent the spread of these machine-produced forgeries, either digitally or physically? And are there any limitations to these methods?
So, it's difficult to really stop their proliferation because, if the bad guys, they are there, they do what they have to do, and then you can't really stop them as such, unless there is more regulation or so. But from a technical point of view, what can be done and what we do, of course, is to catch them, well, it's almost like a race, it's like the bad, AI, not the bad AI, but the generative AI that can be used like for bad purposes. And there is also the AI that we at Art Recognition develop, but also others that can be used, I mean, to to uncover, of course, like real fakes or physical, so human produced fakes, but also digitally produced fakes. How do we do this? So, and why do we think that we have an advantage, you know?
Mhm.
You know, when we train our AI, we feed in images. So like if somebody comes with a supposedly Van Gogh picture, also stop sharing. So if somebody comes with a Van Gogh and we have to, you know, run an analysis and find out whether it's by Van Gogh or not. I mean, this can also be a digitally produced Van Gogh, right? And so what we do in that case, I mean, we feed our machine with both like images of authentic Van Gogh artworks, but also with these synthetic images. So with images produced by a different AI in the style of, you know, the one that we are supposed to uncover. So having fed this information into our machine, we are one step ahead, you know, so we are like being able to, you know, to use like their own images to teach our machine how to uncover new images produced by the generative AI. I mean, I hope the principle is clear. Is not that difficult. So, because I mean, both machines, they learn, right?
Okay.
So in the generative AI, I mean, you feed like Van Gogh real art, and they will produce something in the style of Van Gogh, and that's it. So the data set or the training data set is just Van Gogh. We have two training data sets actually that we feed in parallel. So one is the real Van Gogh, and the other one are the negative examples. So we work with data sets that are double in size, you know, as compared to the generative AI, and we include, you know, whatever has been produced by the generative AI into our training. And so because of that, we have an advantage. If that other AI will produce more, then that kind of information will be learned, I mean, hopefully by our AI. But it's a difficult process, and it's not that easy, actually. I mean, to find these images, I mean, in high quality, but even so, I mean, sometimes we see that our classifiers or convolution neural network can be fooled, you know, by the like the digital fakes. So like I said, it's a race, but we are trying to stay ahead, you know, we are trying to be like proactive and always like you know, improve our technology faster than the others. And I mean, we will see, of course, how this develops, but yeah, I mean, there is hope for sure.
Thank goodness. How about blockchain technology? Does this help to address the challenges posed by the 3D printing in the art world today?
Well, yeah, I mean, the blockchain, it's the way the blockchain works is different than the way deep learning works, right? So on the blockchain, I mean, you just put like you are a modern artist and you have produced, you know, a beautiful painting, and you want to make sure that this is not fake. Then you can get the hash, you know, so you can record it on the blockchain, and then, you know, whatever deep fakes are being produced in the style of your own art, if you don't authenticate it yourself, you know, as an artist, then it's not going to go on the blockchain. So it helps. But the biggest problem, I think, or in my opinion, or at least from our experience, you know, at Art Recognition, is more like in the region of classical art, right?
Right.
So there, the artists don't live anymore, so they can't, you know, testify that is their own art, and then afterwards put it on the blockchain. I mean, you can still, you know, authenticate or make sure, you know, that some classical, like a Renoir or Van Gogh or something, gets a hash and goes on the blockchain. But then you'd still need to authenticate it first. But it helps, I mean, certainly in the sense that, you know, if you create deep fakes that don't get approval from anyone, basically, you know, to go on the blockchain, then that's it. So, I mean, that technology is it's an additional layer of security for this purpose.
All right. Wow, it's very deep. I mean, there's so many things going on with this topic. So I would like to invite the audience and see if they have any questions for Carina regarding everything that we've been discussing today. If you do, you can just let me know. You can raise your hands or maybe add it on the chat. Let's just see. Don't be shy.
Maybe one question from my side.
Yes.
Oh,
Hi,
I
guys.
was wondering who's the pretty fly for a Wi-Fi.
Pretty fly for a Wi-Fi.
Morning,
That's
Sam.
me. Morning, guys. Hi, Carina. I was wondering whether, I mean, how is, let's say, the traditional art community is reacting for those who are actually generating real art, but with a generative AI, because you have a lot of beautiful things actually that are prompted or generated, which I mean really look beautiful. And I mean, I just want to know, okay, how is the traditional community reacting to that? Do they perceive it as art or not?
Well, I mean, I'd say they react with mixed feelings. I mean, you know, the artists themselves, I mean, they are rather hostile. Slash extremely hostile, because they feel threatened, you know. I mean, that they feel that the AI, the generative AI is replacing them. I mean, that's why they're suing, you know, Stable Diffusion and so on. And there are all kinds of initiatives, you know, from the side of the artists to, you know, to stop this. But I mean, obviously, it's not possible to stop it. Now, from the point of view of the, you know, users in terms of like owners or bidders, you know, buyers of art, I'd say that's different too, because I mean, obviously, you know, you also have a bit of a, you know, element of the clash between generations, right? So the youngest people, I mean, they love generative art. I mean, you see this also on the social media, on Instagram, etc. So it's very popular. I mean, this kind of things that I've been showing you, like I don't know, Van Gogh drinking a cola, or you know, mixing pop art with Renaissance. I mean, there are all kinds of things that you can do with generative art, and I think that's very popular amongst the younger generations. Whereas the, you know, the elderly, I mean, they are very conservative still. You know, they prefer like the classical art and the one that you can, you know, hang on your wall on a real canvas. And so I'd say it's different.
Thank you. Cool.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so we have another question in the chat. So Christina's asking, what are some potential future applications for AI in the art world beyond just authentication? And how do you see this technology continuing to evolve over time?
That's a very good question, actually. I mean, there are several things that one can do, and they are also like on our own pipeline. Oh, a question, you know, that we get very often, I mean, not very often, but often enough, you know, from clients basically, is whether, you know, we can tell what's the unknown artist that created an art piece. So sometimes artists don't sign, and then this prompts the question, of course, who was it? And especially if there is some kind of assumption, you know, if this was like a very valuable artwork. So this is something that we can't do yet. It requires some upgrade of our technology. I mean, not massively, but the real part, you know, that we need to work on is the data set. Because basically, I mean, very loosely speaking, if you're asking the question, who did this? I mean, you should be able to search through all the artists that have ever painted something. Of course, normally in practice, you would have some assumption, you know, like if this could be an Impressionist or a Baroque or a Renaissance, and then you are restricting the search. But nevertheless, I mean, if you think it's an Impressionist, then you should have trained your AI on all the Impressionists. You know, I mean, we have the most important ones, but there are also, let's call them second-tier artists that are less expensive, that aren't in our database yet. So in order to be able to, create that product and answer that question, we would need to, update the database. And this brings me back to a question that you had asked, Gabi, which I think is quite important, the limitations. I mean, the issue of the, data manipulation is massive in different ways. I mean, first of all, we have clients who come to us and they are sort of like trying to pull the results in their direction by asking us, like, could you please remove some images from the data set? Or could you please, just use this, but not use that? Or worse, like if they have, say, some kind of Madonna, they are asking us, could you please, rain on those 3 Madonnas that artist has produced in his career, to make sure that there is a big pressure, so we are resisting, of course. I mean, normally we decline this kind of, unless we think, that there is a reason, yes, to like on Picasso. I mean, Picasso has changed his style extremely, like he started as an impressionist and he ended as a cubist. And in that case, it would make sense, to restrict on the data set, but on parts of the data sets. But otherwise, data manipulation is a big issue. We have also, codes of conduct, and we are, very strict with regards to the data. Also, the data that we get from the internet is very important, to curate them, to check them. But if this is not done, I mean, because there are scientific papers that have been published a few years back, and they use like WikiArts data sets to train on Van Gogh, for example. I mean, we know now for sure that those WikiArts data sets, they contain fakes, because we have, our art historian going through that and so on. But then, I mean, we know that what's been published is simply not reliable because those scientists, they weren't. So that's why, I mean, it's very, very important, cleaning, curating the data. It's a major thing.
I can understand. Okay, so we have another question. Matthias is asking, what ethical considerations should be taken into account when using AI to identify fake art, particularly when high financial stakes are involved?
Well, I mean, there are a number of ethical considerations. I mean, they aren't just related to, strictly detecting like AI generated fakes, but to authenticating artworks in general, I mean, I'm not very, very qualified to answer this question, but for example, very often, I mean, well, sometimes we are being offered by our clients a commission. So if they manage to sell, that art piece for a large amount, I mean, especially if they think it's very expensive, then they are offering us some money. I mean, this is something that we are strongly, rejecting, because this is a conflict of interest. I mean, it would mean that we have an interest, in giving a positive response, obviously, so that art gets sold and we earn something. So this is something that we never do. And this is a strong ethical aspect of what we do. And the other one, I mean, it's been mentioned already during the past questions, is the relation to the artist, because AI is replacing them, and they don't earn anything, obviously. I mean, the stable diffusion and so on, they are free for everyone to use. So I think to solve that problem, one needs some kind of like regulation, some authority, somebody who can tell, hey, the artists, I mean, they can't just be kicked out of the way, they need to get something. I mean, like on the financial market, you have FINMA, or Fed or whatever. On the art market, there is no such thing, as a regulation authority. And that's a big problem, actually. And I think in the future, I mean, somebody will have to take action.
Of course. And how about like individual collectors and buyers? How do they protect themselves against all these risks that we've been discussing?
Yes, I mean, it depends, of course, on the value, right, of the art pieces that they want to buy or sell. I mean, if it's something that's worth, I don't know, less than 5,000 francs, I mean, maybe you wouldn't spend a lot of time, doing your due diligence or too many efforts. But if you think it's worth, 10 million, then there are a number of things that buyers or sellers could or should do. AI is one thing, to have their artworks authenticated by art recognition, for example, or by other eventual, commercial providers that do that. But the AI doesn't work perfectly in all cases. Like I said, data set is very important. Like there is the famous example of Vermeer. Vermeer has produced 28 paintings, and it's one of the most expensive artists of all time. And we can't train on Vermeer at this point in time because the data set is simply too small. So in that case, we cannot help. With this in mind, especially for the very expensive art pieces, one should see an expert for sure. For good and for bad, I don't like them, but they are there. They are the well. The reason. It's nothing personal, but for example, like if you own an art piece and you go to an expert and he's giving you, say, a positive response, and then you're going to a different expert and he will give you a negative response, then you have a problem. And this happens very often, actually, in practice. But there are other ways. One can check the pigments, for example, so there are chemistry labs that can, find out whether the colors, the paintings used, they are contemporary to the artist, or also the provenance certificates, so there are like the ownership, how that art piece changed hands, from its production, basically, so from the atelier of that a painter up to the day that's been acquired by the owner. So there are a few other things that the collectors should do,
right,
to make sure that their art is real. Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions or maybe doubts or wants to add something to? Let's just. Okay. No? All right. I think you've been very thorough.
It seems so.
Yeah, so yes, of course. This topic is huge, right? So we can spend, not just 1 hour or 40 minutes discussing it. We can spend like the whole morning if it goes and goes and goes, because it's so huge. But I think that is something very, very much very interesting. That is something that is going on right now, and everybody's talking about it, and not just talking about it, but there are certainly a lot of risks involved in all the forgeries, and not just for, of course, before you explain that there are apps and there are programs and software that can be for fun, but it can be easily turned into this dark world of art, and that's something that we need to take into consideration, and not just in the art world, but in overall with everything that is going on with ChatGPT and everything. So what I gather from all this this conversation is that we need to actually embrace technology as we have it right now, but be very, very careful on what usage we can give to it. I don't know if you agree.
Totally. And also, one takeaway is also, also coming back to the 3D printing. So this technology, which is, a bit less in the focus, of the media nowadays, but nevertheless equally important, the fact that, you have the molders, you have it's not just a 3D scanner, as you imagine it, but it's like a whole, factory that can use like different materials and engineering and so forth. But there's also has like two different aspects, there is the positive one to help like museums, galleries, etc., like to create, paintings and so on, so to use it for preservation purposes, or to create replicas, for their own use, so that the art institutions can profit from this technology.
Yes, of course.
But there is, like we said, there is also the negative, the dark side of it, where this cheap art, is being proliferated. You cannot imagine, how much art is being sold on eBay. Like literally, you can go on eBay and you can buy a Cézanne. You think it's amusing, but unfortunately there are people who actually do it.
Right.
And I mean, that's a problem. It's very, very difficult. I mean, we also have a bit of an educational role, I think, you know, to explain that. I mean, it's not possible, you know, to buy a Cezanne for like 1,000 euros. And and also, I mean, the fact that we can help, you know, like we could check that picture before you pay the fee, you know, and we can like put a flag on it and, hey, don't spend your money. So, I mean, there are ways to fight, you know, against this. And we are, you know, doing, you know, and we're happy to, you know, bring our contribution to creating a more transparent and clean art market.
Yeah. Makes total sense. All right, Carina. So I think if nobody else have any questions.
I do have a question concerning 3D art. Is it possible also to recognize fraudulent activities on 3D art elements, like even a mobile or something like this? You know what I mean? Tanguy art or whatever, like which
so like
is
three-dimensional in terms of like sculptures, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible in principle, but it's not something that we do currently. So we can't, I mean, like we in our company, we only work with two-dimensional objects. It doesn't have to be just printing paintings. I mean, it can also be drawings, for example, or lithographies or so on, but it has to be two-dimensional. I don't think, honestly, that there is any like research project on 3D because it's more complicated and there is less data, you know. So there is, I think, there are less sculptures, you know, and images of sculptures to like train on. And that's why I think scientists are less, you know, motivated to work on the 3D art. But this is something to consider for the future because the principle is very, very similar. You know, I mean, you just train on some images and then you try to uncover.
Maybe you need other sensors. But I was also wondering, is it already in use for handwriting recognition? Because that's something which also could be interesting. And there it's also the question, another question you said, Van Meer, it's very difficult because it's only less than 30 pictures you can use for the pattern recognition. But this is, how many for handwriting, how many elements do you need to train an AI system that it recognizes correctly?
Yeah, so I mean, you probably need a few hundreds. So I mean, we did actually some projects also on handwritings, but it is not something that we currently do. There is a difference though. So when training on pictures, like on images, they are all different, right? So you have a lot of information, different information, you know, packed on every painting. Whereas when you feed, you know, handwriting data into the AI, I mean, they are all the same ideally, you know. So you have the handwriting of that person that's been done like, I don't know how many times. But that's a bit easier for the machine to learn, you know, because you are just like replicating the information. It's the same as with the traffic signs, you know, or with the cars versus airplanes. Like you have the same object that's being fed like, I don't know, 10,000 times. Whereas the images, you know, the pictures, the paintings, they are all different from each other. So that's why what we do is actually more difficult. And the handwriting software, I mean, is there since the 80s. I mean, I think that IBM had released the program in the very early days. It's probably more advanced now, and we can also do it, I mean, with our own software, because like I said, it's a bit easier for our machine to learn, you know, handwriting as opposed to like information from artworks.
All right. Thank you, Olaf. We also have another question from Rebecca on the chat. So she's asking, painting can be created with AI. What can AI teach us about what it means to be creative? Or does it have an impact on studying art colleges?
Well, I mean, what I'm going to say now, it's a very, very personal opinion. So, I mean, I don't think AI is creative. So, I mean, AI is as good as as creative, if you will, as the developer, you know, and as good as the data set. I mean, what the AI does, and I mean, also this text-to-image models or text-to-text. I mean, coming back to the ChatGPT, which is like everybody's crazy about. I mean, it's just compiling information from the training data set. So ChatGPT, it's not creative in my opinion, but it has so much, information fed in, like basically it scans the internet that it's able to look, like as it is creative, but it's not. So, I mean, it's the same with the generative art. I mean, it's like whatever comes out of it, and so every output of it is as good as the input, and of course, as good as the machine that's been created by a developer. So in that sense, I mean, it is creative in a way, but not like a genuine creativity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, of course, behind AI, there are humans. So we're still the core of creativity, right?
Yes, of course. And even behind the training data are humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So Matthias has another question, very broad question. Some are praising AI and saying we should move fast on the development. Other skepticism over it, suggesting that we should wait more time regulating and scoping AI implications, as it will be completely change our lives. What is your opinion? Come on, Matthias.
Yeah, I mean, this is a difficult question. So personally, I mean, I think we should allow the AI to develop at its own pace. I mean, I don't think we should try to slow it or to accelerate it. I mean, I think we should leave the scientists, do their work. I mean, I'm also a developer at the heart, so to speak. So, I mean, I know that there are initiatives and discussions and so on, like to try to hold it, for a while. I mean, that's stupid in my opinion. I think that should not happen because, I mean, it's something that's there to stay, and it will move ahead, whether we like it or not. So I think what should we as users or as humans even do is to use this technologies, I mean, for our own purposes, so to learn to use them as tools and not to be afraid, that they're going to overtake and rule the world and so on. I mean, this is all nonsense. No, but in this context, there have been discussions about whether, when the pocket calculator has been introduced, I don't know, 100 years ago or whatever, the math teachers, started protesting and saying, no, we should ban them because they will make us stupid and so on. I mean, of course. And so I think it's pretty similar, actually. I mean, instead of being afraid, that whatever they can do to us or so, I mean, we should learn, I think, to use these tools for us, so, and to make a positive impact in our lives.
Yeah, totally agree. All right. Does anybody else have a question for Carina? Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Carina. As this is a tradition for us in the Insurtech Breakfast, we always take a photo of everybody at the end. So if you would like to, please just turn on your camera so we can see you and we can take a snap, and just to remember this moment. So let's just hold on. Let me see everybody. Okay, everybody. Hello. All right. Okay, I'm gonna take it. Big smiles. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you everybody who joined us today. It's been great hearing from you, Carina. And hopefully we can continue the conversation in another time, as we usually do. So again, next month we will have another Insurtech Breakfast, and we will let you know about all the information about it. So hopefully we can see you again in that one as well. So have a great Friday. Again, thank you so much, Carina, and all the team of
Thank you, everyone,
at our recognition, for all the information and such an insight that really, it was amazing. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. See you next month. Bye.
See you.